Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Once again, it is time for an upper body day, but a quick reminder, if you guys would please click like down below, be greatly appreciated. If you're not following or subscribed, please do so. And if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below to say hello or give your thoughts, I would appreciate that also. Thank you so much. So added a little more work today. I decided I wanted to start doing some band work at the end for my arms. And I'll get to that in a minute as to why I think I need to do that. It's just for overall tendons. So I started off with just the bench press, and I'm like, instead of pausing, I'm like, let's just work on soft touch and go. I feel like for hypertrophy, this works just as well. No need to pause right now. I'm not power benching at the moment. I'm looking to just build muscle. So I've said many times, guys, I think touch and go works just fine for hypertrophy as long as it's controlled. Right? So touch and go, the main thing you're looking for is to avoid the bounce. But if you do like I do, and it's just a very soft controlled touch, that actually works really, really well for size. So then I did supersets on that with weighted pull-ups. I did pull-ups for the first two, and then the third set, I'm like, I just feel like doing some chins. Let me throw a 45, I want to do a set of chin-ups. Pretty similar movement anyways, but I think this following through, I want to stick with just the pull-ups. And the reason is I'll get plenty of extra bicep work from the bands. After the incline curls, but I just felt like doing it. I'm just like, you know what? I just really want to do a set of chins. And I think that's perfectly fine. I know people say, man, you're just breaking your own program in the middle. Like, yeah, mainly because I just felt like it. And it's still a back exercise. But for the bench press, again, notice we're just taking a relatively wide grip, not crazy wide, but what are we trying to do? I'm trying to just be stacked at the bottom. So what I'm shooting for here is to go pretty much flat back. Notice there's always going to be a little bit of natural arch because we want to be tight, flat heeled. I'm stacking the wrists and taking a grip width in a way to where the forearms are perfectly upright. So you guys have noticed my main power grip is in a little closer, but if I really want to put the most stretch on the chest, that's going to be the way to do it. And so the idea behind what I'm doing there, again with that, is just getting the stretch on the chest. Kind of like what I did with the McDonald bar last time. You're trying to get more stretch. But we can get a good dang stretch with the barbell. Because really, I only get, maybe an extra inch at the most out of that bar. So I'm like, I can just do a normal bar too. Just set it up. It's easy to do. But again, in that case, if you really want to get the most out of it on a flat bench, you really do need to get the range of motion. And so again, taking the grip width to where you get the deepest range of motion, which is what I'm trying to do. You're minimizing your arch, all that, so that we get a nice, good, solid stretch. But then trying to maintain a little bit of a stretch reflex by as soon as I softly touch the chest, right, we're coming back up. Trying not to bounce. Some of them we're touching a little harder, but a lot of them I'm trying to do a very soft touch so that it's just touch and reverse, touch and reverse. So again, we're not bouncing, making the chest do all the work. Just, like you would on a pause bench. You can get the same out of a touch and go. I do know some people who feel the touch and go may be better for chest development, so which is why I mess with it back and forth. So again, did all that, and then I did chins for the last one. Yeah, I think my back is doing pretty good now. And of course, people are going to tell me, oh, your back work is horrible. You don't use the right form on anything. And it's like, but I've got a good back. And I feel my back. It's always a funny thing, People can assess lifts, but it's like I have an overdeveloped muscle group that is clearly, quite possibly, my best muscle, right? I do variations of lifts to where I feel it working and stretching that muscle the most. So how could it be wrong? Just silly. People also ignore the biomechanics. But dips, I went up in weight. I'm like, you know what? I'm able to get 8 reps going super, super deep now with the 45. I want to see if I can work it up heavier. Now, I did. I used a 55, and I'm able to get that really deep stretch. Now we're getting a couple inches, maybe 3 inches below the elbow now, the back of the shoulder. So now we're getting deep, and I'm really getting that intense stretch in the chest, which I've been really happy with on the dips. But I've only been doing it with a 45, and I'm like, let's get to a 55. Now, I can only get 6s doing it that way, but hey, at least it's an increase. Then I'm doing my rows, and yes, if you guys can't really barely tell from this angle, I guess, unless you were to zoom in, I got 3 plates aside on this is 315. I'm like, let's do some little bit of English on the rows, just kind of like I did last time. And here's the thing, I feel this tremendously. I feel it through my whole back. Feels great. Feels great. Like I get that crazy stretch, and that's the reason I'll do that sometimes with a heavier weight and use English like that. And no one can argue I don't have the back strength. You guys have watched me do strict seal rows, right? Set up on the seal row bench with 235 for sets of 8. So yeah, the cheat rows though, man, it's just that I get that deeper stretch. That eccentric forces me into a really, really deep stretch with a heavy weight. So again, if we're going to talk about stretch and where people want to talk about lengthened positions, it's literally using a heavy weight with a little bit of body English on the concentric, but still making the primary movers do the work because it's, again, they have to, right? You're not going to hip drive that much weight all the way up, right? But then it's that crazy stretch I get at the bottom, right? Which has been the key of many Mr. Olympias. I'm just going to point that out there. Look how many Mr. Olympia winners use similar stuff. Very, very similar. Some of them cheat way more. It works very well, and anyone who does this, if you do it right, because I'm actually rowing it up to the chest, not even the hip, taking it all the way up. Feel the traps, feel the lats, feel everything. And it feels really good. It's hard, it's challenging. I get a little nauseated doing it with that much weight. But, again, cheat rows. And they work. And mine are barely cheat rows, though, to be fair. I know you would cheat more. But they work. And here's the idea. They're going to be in a bunch of reels. Probably going to have some of them blow. People are going to freak out. They're going to get all angry at me, and it'll get tons and tons of views. It's kind of what happens every time I start doing rows of different types. And it's just funny because at the end of the day, I get a great back stimulus with all these different back variations. So, who cares? But rows like that will make you thick top to bottom because so many muscles get worked, right? And I feel it gives great carryover to the deadlift. I actually saw Kaylor Woolham and other people point out the same. They're like, dude, any sort of body English on a row really carries over to a deadlift. And he was Dr. Deadlift. I personally feel like he's right. My own just experience as a coach kind of lines up and says, Kaylor, Mr. Crazy World Record breaker holder in the deadlift, seems to be onto something with that. Like, not just because he's broken records, but when you mess with it, I feel the carryover. Like when I know what I feel on a deadlift versus doing this, I think there's definitely a transfer. So I'm going to tend to agree with him. Now, the fact that he's broken a bunch of world records on top of it works well with it, right? But again, just my experience tends to carry over really, really well. So I might as well do them as long as we can recover. That's the only downside is, can you handle all the extra, potential axial fatigue? And I feel like I can right now. All right, the leg extensions, I did supersets on these with the incline curls. On these, I went up 5 pounds and I focused on pausing it at the bottom. I think I only got 7 reps on the first set, but then I got 8 and 8. So most of the reps, I'm trying to really focus on that stretch. So again, I'm trying to get stronger into that stretch position, and we're actually getting real close to now what I was doing when I wasn't getting quite as deep a range of motion by forcing that range of motion. And now the strength has been slowly working up, doing it, and that's the idea. Trying to go into those deep stretch positions and stuff like that because we need them. They help with hypertrophy. Definitely that long head, and I know my long head and my triceps lagging. So we do stuff like that to bring it up. So I think between the really deep dips and I think doing those deeper extensions like that, I think is really over time going to help continue to bring up my triceps, because as I get leaner, I'm doing all this cardio to lean out. Really, if I could just bring up those triceps, if I can just bring up the rear delts and other stuff with that while bringing that waistline way down, it probably helped me tremendously, just as far as overall look. Incline curls took these sets to failure, all of them, which I haven't been able to really get beyond where I'm at. I'm going to failure. I'm pretty much hitting the same reps for a little bit, but it's okay. It's an incline curl. I'm also focusing more on, instead of just stretching into the bottom and coming back up, I'm actually doing a lot of them just coming to a brief pause. I think we still keep a good stretch reflex because it's forcing me to make sure that I lock it. That's the main thing, because sometimes if we just try to come off that stretch at the bottom, we may be coming short on the lockout. And my elbows don't fully lock anyway, so coming even further short, not necessarily good. So again, I want to make sure I get that stretch. So I'm trying to focus on some of these movements. I'm really trying to focus more on the stretch. So you guys will notice there's a trend there. It's not every exercise, but on a lot of them I am. I'm really trying to get those stretch positions in more and more and more. So the dips were going deeper. Squats we've been going really, really deep. the laying extensions, trying to just get into that deepest stretch as I can go, and even if I have to pause there, do it. So some of the incline curls, I'm kind of doing the same. I'm briefly making sure I'm just coming to that stretch at the bottom, even if it's a very, very brief pause on a lot of the reps. So I'm trying to really double down on those getting the stretch on a lot of these muscles, because I'm trying to gain any muscle I can while leaning out. Like, we're doing all the cardio, focusing on getting leaner, tightening up the waistline. So I need to be doing everything I can possible to gain muscle while doing it. And I feel like I'm getting thicker. I'm just looking at myself and stuff in general. I feel like I'm getting thicker while doing this, all this cardio. It's been interesting. Because I'm sitting here while I'm talking, looking at this. I'm looking at my calves and quads and my shorts, all veiny. I'm like, dude, I swear they're growing. Is it cardio anabolic? No, the list cardio is not. But again, because I'm pushing everything, that's the idea. We want to try to stimulate muscle growth. We want to try to stimulate it. So again, doing these deep, making sure I've gone over to incline curls, because we also get that deep stretch. All of my back stuff, the deep stretch, the dips are the deep stretch, right? So we're getting the stretch on the pull-ups at the bottom. The rows, I'm using the cheat rows to force myself with a heavy weight to go into a deeper stretch at the bottom, because it forces me to go that way back down, trying to catch it at the bottom. It goes into a stretch. It's unavoidable. Really useful tool. I feel like I can stretch deeper that way than I can with just doing super strict. It's just why I'm doing it. So again, forcing these things to occur, but I'm not doing them as partials. And people say, look, I'm partials, but I'm really not. I'm trying to do most of these exercises through, a proper range of motion, at least with what I can get on the top. Obviously pull-ups and stuff, that's the range of motion, unless I were to try to swing over the bar and disengage the lats, which that's its own topic. So then afterwards, it's like, then we did shoulders and we did supersets band work. I didn't do upright rows today, because I'm always like, man, do I want to do upright rows plus the side laterals or upright rows plus the rear delts? I'm like, why don't we just do all the lateral stuff? So I use these same heavier weights I use on the other stuff, which means I can only get 8 reps on this. So I did my laterals with these. And like I said, I can only get 8 instead of 10, but that's okay. It's still an isolation movement. Very, very little cheating, because I'm leaning forward onto that incline bench. It's at the highest setting, so it's almost upright, but we have just a tiny amount of forward lean, and then leaning against it. Notice I've got the plate set in front to keep the bench from sliding. Really helps remove any cheating. And then of course I can do them on the 45-degree incline. It really is a rear delt. So by doing this, I'm really trying to focus on bringing up the side delt, the rear delt, the upper traps between these two movements. But I feel like a lot of that whole shelf too gets worked with those cheat rows big time, right? Especially the whole trap. Man, you're going to feel a lot of trap doing that, even though the stretch at the bottom is a lat. It's just that angle of it. So again, double downing on all of it. That whole area could come up. Like I said, triceps need to come up in general, lateral head, the tricep big time, that rear delt area. So really that whole side, the rear delt, upper shelf. Again, get it all bigger while bringing the waistline down as we get leaner. Again, I think it'll help for me, especially the triceps too. But again, we're putting in tons of tricep work. But again, making sure that I'm really hitting that. So this gives us 6 sets for the shoulders, with a bias towards obviously the rear and the side. Because even my laterals are at that slight forward lean, so we're just having a slight bias there. And these are all about 8 reps. Some of them might have got 9. So again, heavier weight for me, but that's okay. It's okay. We've been kind of progressively loading this stuff. Like these rear delt flies have been progressively overloading them. And again, my rear delts have sucked, but now I'm doing stricter movements like this and trying to go heavier, more reps and heavier. So we're chasing progressive overload on really a weak head of a muscle with isolation work that should help solve it. But again, I feel like the cheat rows too. And then we finished up, I just did 3 sets of band press downs and 3 sets of band curls supersetted. Why? One, I'm doing a lot of heavy isolation. So because I'm doing all the pressing and pulling and it's all heavier, not powerlifting heavy because it's all like 6s and 8s and stuff, but still heavy enough. And the same thing with the extensions and curls. I'm doing like 8 rep sets on those stretch movements. All right, I do want to make sure the tendons are getting work, and then we're getting extra blood flow. So again, we could talk about, for me, arms have tended to be a weak link. So it's like, let's make sure we do get some real pump work and blood flow to them. And the same thing with the tendons. That's one of the problems we run into with weak muscles. You start pushing them hard. You know, we start doing 8 rep sets on stricter isolation movements or stretching isolation movements. The tendons might get inflamed if we're not careful, especially if we're progressively overloading them. So I feel like doing some of these prehab movements for the tendons, even though they are themselves good hypertrophy movements, and think about how they counterbalance what I'm doing. So stop and think about the fact that all that heavier isolation is all stretch position, lengthen position, focus, you know, for about 7-8 rep range in that area, right? 7, 8, 9, it's what I've been doing. So then we're coming behind and then doing the higher rep band work, but it's all contracted position. Okay, so the other end of it. So now we're coming in and we're working the other end of the strength curve and pausing a lot of it, like I'm trying to pause some of the curls at the top, pausing a lot of these press downs at the lockout where they have the most tension against the bands. So we're doing all this, the heavier lengthened position, that we're coming in and pumping those contracted positions. So again, we're kind of working that two ends of the spectrum, in addition to getting some blood flow to the tendons, and that's a big part of it. I want to make sure those tendons stay healthy, and that's what I'm trying to do with a lot of it too. Making sure that occurs while I'm doing all this other movements, because they might inflame the tendons. Let's just cut it off now before it happens. But overall, pretty happy with today's workouts. Obviously a long vlog, so I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.